All right. Jakob, you are, we're not officially saying you're co-host.
Oh, okay. I have like a proving period. I guess.
We're just going to see how it goes.
Okay,
we have to jump you in.
Yeah.
So prepare for that.
hold our hoops.
Got it. Yeah.
But I do. One of the things that has you in a higher regard with me lately is is your take on "It's Gonna Blow."
Yes.
All right. So I will start using "It's Gonna Blow" a lot, but I think before I make it a thing that I did, I want to give it to you first. I want to give you what you gave me.
That's really kind. So you want to be able to sort of like put in the lore that this is my take.
Yes, but then.
From
abuse
this
it
point forward.
forever.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Understood.
So if I do my time now, you get it. Okay.
All
right. So explain "It's Gonna Blow" to us.
Okay. So "It's Gonna Blow" is this documentary about the really vibrant and you'll see why this matters later, up and coming music scene of San Diego in like the mid 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. That really consisted of a bunch of post-hardcore bands. There were Drive Like Jehu, Klickitat-Ikatawi, Antioch Arrow, all of these really, really influential bands that had people saying that San Diego was going to be the next Seattle. You know, the grunge scene had been really big, and people were looking at our little, quaint village and saying, this is going to be the next place on the West Coast where a new genre is going to explode from. There were record label battles over who gets to sign who, and after all of that, it didn't really blow. Sort of fizzled out, and ultimately, my kind of unified theory of how to approach San Diego is that San Diego is the town where it's gonna blow.
It's always gonna blow.
It's always gonna blow. Yeah.
And now that you've infected me with that phrase, I do everything with it now. I gave a speech to a group of older engaged folks in La Jolla the other day, and I structured it around the concept of "It's Gonna Blow," and it was brilliant. It worked. It worked.
Did you give Jakob credit?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, okay, yeah. Was that recorded? I'd love to see. Was I in a footnote?
No, I'm sure we can call the host and see if they remember that part. But there are a lot of things in San Diego that are always going to blow. The Padres, They were going to blow. It's been a little rough for a while.
And sports is the perfect example of this. I mean, whether you talk about the Padres, who acquired all these superstars and now seem to be kind of pooping the bed, I guess, is the kind of way to put it. Or you think about the Chargers, who every single season they were supposed to do something.
They were going to blow.
But you can expand it to all sorts of elements of San Diego.
Sports arena is going to blow.
Yep.
The new city hall is going to blow.
Mm-hmm.
It's like very weird wording.
It's going to blow.
Fair, yeah.
It's not going to blow up. It's going to blow.
It's going to blow.
Yeah.
In the good way.
In the good way.
In the good
way.
blow.
Yeah, but not the too good.
There's a lot of meanings of blow. This is the good one.
Yeah.
All right. One of the things that was going to blow, and I think it's blowing, maybe.
In a classic San Diego style?
No, in a real, it's
Okay.
actually blowing up,
Yeah.
which is the San Diego State.
Yeah.
And San Diego State and its athletics are on now a 5-year or more trajectory of they're about to blow.
Yeah.
They want a new stadium. They got it. Andy Keats did this the other day. They wanted to get the development and everything done, and they wanted to get an MLS team in to prove that they could do that as well. They got that. The basketball team reached the very last game of the season, which you want to do, which is the championship. They did not win it, but that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But they got there.
They got there.
There's also actually educationally, there's this big movement to make SDSU an R1 research university.
Right.
Which, again, is just more blowage, I guess.
All right. Well, of course, the education reporter's got to get real for a
Well,
second.
you know.
Sports, whatever.
That's what you hired me to do.
This is a university. Let's talk about education for a sec.
All right. The softball team, I'm going to bring that up. They went to the World Series, or they won the Mountain West Conference tournament, almost got to the World Series. The last chapter of San Diego State's ascendance in this moment, the moment where it truly blows, is if the school becomes part of a Power 5 conference. There are 5 power conferences, as they're called, in this country, mostly around college football. But they're all sports conferences, right? So the SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, Big 12, and the Pac-12 are all these Power 5 conferences. And SDSU really wants to be a part. They don't want to be part of the little Mountain West Conference. Utah got to go to the Pac-12. SDSU's wanted this. Yeah. Now, the new stadium and all of the success seems to be lining it up for that. They sent a letter to the Mountain West and said, "Hey, we're going to be done with you. Yeah. We're done with your little world.
We want to see other people."
Yeah, basically. I like to think of it. So imagine you have a partner that you live with, right? And you hit them up and you say, "Listen, it's not working out, but I want to stay for the rest of the month." But at the same time, you're up against this, like, your lease is about to expire. And so you have to make this decision. Do I leave before my lease expires, or do I leave after the lease expires, and which doubles how much you have to pay? Yeah.
Right.
But you let your partner know, I don't think it's working out. Over the long term, I think we're going to be leaving, but can we maybe extend how long I stay for a bit? And your partner says, no, we're done.
Yeah.
Shuts the door.
Pack your shit up.
Yeah, pack your shit up, which basically is what happened with the Mountain West.
Yeah, the Mountain West Conference said, "Thanks for your letter. Send us $17 million."
Yeah, which is the exit fee for this conference, which would have doubled had they decided to leave after June 30th.
Right.
Yeah.
So the problem is the SDSU has not been invited yet to a Power 5 conference or the Pac-12. It sounds like the Pac-12 is probably the natural place, but the Pac-12's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
There are a couple of teams, California teams, or universities. They're actually universities.
They do things other than
educational
sports,
institutions.
Yeah.
They are leaving the Pac-12, and that's causing a lot of tension problems. And so the Pac-12's got a lot going on. They're like, hey, we want to...
They're also sort of negotiating this new media rights deal that may actually preclude them from inviting anybody new before they kind of wrap up those negotiations.
Right. So we're all pretty interested in this story, and I think it's will the university be able to make that payment? How do they want to do a payment plan? And the Mountain West is like, no, just the check's good. Yeah. You could just send us a check.
Here's our Venmo.
Pretty much, yeah.
So we'll be interested to see, but that is the last step that they need to take to, I think, blow.
Yeah,
finally,
and it's an interesting situation because I think a lot of things are now up in the air, right? San Diego State took that letter as the breakup letter and said, you're out on June 30th. And so while there was this tension about whether or not they leave before June 30th or after June 30th and have that $17 million exit fee they have to pay double to $34 million, now it just looks like they're out of a conference.
Yeah.
And at the same time, their New Flame has not extended its hand, but their ex has slammed the door and thrown everything out on the curb, and so I think it's a weird position for them to be in.
So if they're left without a conference, they're not going to blow.
Well, so they have a year still in the Mountain West. That's no matter what. The question, what happens after that? I think it's not a good. It's a dud so far as blowing. But if they do get into the Pac-12, they've blown, especially.
So could San Diego State, are they the first sort of San Diego thing to reverse this trend? Well, I mean, I'm sure there are other things.
Well, look, there's businesses that have
ignore.
Done well, like Qualcomm, for example.
Yeah.
They blew.
Yeah.
This fine institution
their stadium also literally blew up.
for.
Voice of San Diego. That's how I ended my talk, is that we've always been about to blow. And it's just been this claw, every year of just we're a little better.
Yeah.
So, yes, exactly. So there's a lot of things in San Diego that have succeeded, but there's just always something right on the edge, and we'll keep watching that. So another update, we wanted to follow up last week on the homelessness discussion. So if you haven't checked that out, Jakob was part of a roundtable we did about the city's decision to ban homeless encampments across San Diego if shelters are available and within 2 blocks of certain sensitive areas like schools and riverbeds and shelters if at all times, no matter whether there's shelter available or not. You provided a great input of people you talked to who were encamped on the streets and their uncertainty about what's happening. So I wanted to follow up. One thing I don't think I articulated well enough then, but I think of all the things that vote did or didn't do, and we're going to see, it was, and I think Joe LaCava said this on the days, that it was the best, most comprehensive and deepest discussion about homelessness that the city council has ever had. I think they've done a lot of discussions about specific shelters here or a policy there or whatever. They've probably done thousands of those over the last many years. But I think this was the first one where the biggest questions about homelessness were grappled with, and where the depth of the problem was, and the lack of shelters and all kinds of things. All of the biggest issues of homelessness were discussed. Now, it doesn't mean that they came to the great resolution or whatever, and I think it really is problematic. And I don't think we talked about this enough, that it was a 5-4 vote on such a divisive and important step for the city to take, to be divided, especially along like historically racially segregated lines too. Like that's a little, well, not a little, it's very disturbing. So I think there's a lot of issues like that, but I think it is fair to say that was like a huge discussion. And I'm in a way, if that's the only thing we got out of it, I think that's a good step to acknowledge as a community that we all need to have that level of discussion, probably every few months now, until we see real progress on things. So that's one thing I wanted to get across.
Well, the second vote is happening next week.
Right.
And then after that, once the mayor signs it, I believe, and remind me if I'm confused here, but they set like a 30-day after he signs, or 30-day after they open the first safe lot, right?
They said they wouldn't start enforcing until 30 days after the first safe parking lot is opened. And he says that'll be next week or a week from the next few days. We'll see if that comes forward or not. I do think there is a chance that the problem will show some signs of improvement if a lot of people are allowed to move into that safe lot rapidly, without the enforcement part of it. But when that gets filled and when the next one gets filled, that's where like the real issue comes. What happens then? Are they going to push people around, create chaos, even more violence, or do they? I don't know. That's the biggest question going forward. I
mean, I think the vote as a whole is it's a really strange position. I think that a lot of it is pretty discouraging, but it also does seem to be a call to arms in certain ways. You know, for example, San Diego Unified recently offered up some properties for the district to potentially license for free, and then the city would essentially take control of this and hire a contractor and pay for it, a service provider to manage these sites. There are multiple sites, and they could set up safe parking in all of the lots. But also a really interesting thing that school board member Richard Barrera told me is that he hopes that they can set up actually safe camping sites inside the old campus at Central Elementary, which is a pretty novel idea, I think, at least for San Diego, and would offer a whole bunch of benefits, from the fact that there's already electricity and lighting and Wi-Fi and playgrounds and a playground,
restrooms,
and restrooms.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly what I think the best case scenario would be. Is that if we continue to match the energy and anxiety and the suffering on the streets with policy discussions at that same level, that maybe it will provoke everybody to pitch in where they can, and for every day from now forward to be an opportunity for these leaders to put forward another place where somebody's stepping up and offering space, another place where somebody is offering a unit or a hotel conversion or something to make possible the great transition that they hope to see, which is the encampments move off the streets and into safe somethings. Yeah. Because right now there's energy and there's a measure to push them off the streets, but there's as they all admit, not enough places for them to go. So that needs to be resolved somehow. So if they're going to keep the energy on this side, then where's the energy on the other side, and will it continue? So that was an interesting discussion.
And kind of, the sooner the better, because these things take a long time to roll out. And so these potential sites at San Diego Unified Properties are unlikely to come online anytime soon.
Right.
You know.
Also, another update on that front, on July 12th, another court will be hearing and ruling on, you might remember this, increase to the hotel room tax that was put on the ballot right before the pandemic. It passed, but not with 2/3 of the vote. And the city and others are arguing that because it was a citizens initiative, it did not need 2/3 of the vote, even though the city attorney had said herself twice in the ballot language that it does need 2/3 of the vote. And that is one of the legal problems with it becoming law still. And so that the courts are still deciding, back and forth whether that is something that could be implemented or not. And in July, we might have an answer to that. Now, that was money that was supposed to be set aside for a convention center expansion, of course, road repair, but also homeless services and housing. So that could unleash a significant amount of money if that were to come through, or it's just another court date and nothing will happen because it's going to blow, but it didn't. Lastly, I wanted to get an update from you. You did a story this week about the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency sending weird summons to...
Yeah. So basically, Jesse and I worked on this story for a while. A Wired reporter a little while back got this FOIA or received a database back from this FOIA request that showed that Immigrations and Customs Enforcement had issued hundreds of thousands of these summonses called 1509 summonses, and they essentially are supposed to be strictly for customs, illegal imports, these kinds of investigations. Broadly, you can understand ICE's work to fall into kind of two categories. One is like goods and the other is people. And these summonses are supposed to be strictly in the goods category of enforcement. This Wired reporter was kind enough to give us this database that he'd received, and we scraped through it and found hundreds of summonses that were sent to San Diego area organizations, from government organizations to a whole lot to utilities providers, and also some to schools. We were able to get a hold of some of these summonses that were sent out, specifically one to Sweetwater and one to San Diego State. And the San Diego State one was very interesting because we also got a whole email chain of an agent speaking to San Diego State officials, and we found that ICE was requesting personal medical information of two students, and that specifically COVID-19 vaccine status, which is a very strange thing if you are using a summons that is supposed to be for goods and not people. Obviously, a lot of this is speculation, but it would seem that, especially given the timing of this summons, which was sent shortly after federal officials made it COVID vaccination required to gain permanent legal status, it would seem that these summonses were being used for immigrations investigations, which is not what they're supposed to be used for. And there's a long history of ICE being criticized by legal experts, even Senator Ron Wyden, for example, for misusing these summons and issuing them over broadly for things that they are not meant to be used for.
Oh, fascinating. It's amazing what happens under the radar and surfaces like this.
Yeah. And this is especially under the radar because these summonses are administrative subpoenas and they don't require judicial oversight. So there's a lot of this is just drowned in fog, and it's difficult. It's a very opaque system and a very, very opaque agency.
You can read about that more at VOSD.org/Jakob, but with a K.
With a K, yeah.